Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Saturday, October 25th, 2025. And Carney's conflict of interests are laid out by Moose on the Loose. And I've got the link to the spreadsheet. People have been sending it my way the last couple of days, and I forgot to highlight it, so I wanted to highlight it. And it's a pretty damning spreadsheet. It's not really a spreadsheet, it's like a whole bunch of, it's like a thought bubble thing where you can share ideas. It's really quite deep and damaging. So it's interesting to see these kind of things, and they don't seem to have any impact on the electorate, and that's weird, right? Like, that's weird, don't you think? Carrier strike group to combat narco-terrorism in the Gulf of America. So Donald Trump talks about how he's making sure that these people stop poisoning the United States with drugs. Interesting, because our government is handing out drugs like candy. So weird, right? And partnering with Mexico and China to make the drugs. So weird, right? The commercials will be pulled. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with the trade. I've got an update on the NBA sports betting, but trade negotiations between Canada and the United States have not been restarted yet. Donald Trump is upset, and the commercials will be pulled. And I think that's going to trigger the restoration of trade negotiations between Canada and the United States. The pulling of the commercials undoes the whatever we've done, and we get to go back to like negotiating the trade. And so we'll see if that actually happens, because Trump seems pretty ticked off. So there's lots to get to. And really, I was worried that there was just going to be a baseball show today, but I don't have any baseball news at all. Lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Andrea is highlighting this Trump truth, and he says, Canada cheated. This is all caps. Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security. Canada is trying to illegally influence the United States Supreme Court in one of the most important rulings in the history of our country. Canada has long cheated on tariffs, charging our farmers as much as 400%. Now they and other countries can't take advantage of the United States any longer. Thank you to the Ronald Reagan Foundation for exposing this fraud. Make America great again. So there you go. He's ticked. And Mario is responding to Dan. Dan Scavino says, make no mistake about it, Canada is openly interfering in U.S. elections by targeting Republican districts. Could you imagine if the roles were reversed and President Trump ran ads in Canada? Amazing Polly says President Trump is paying Rumble and other people to influence pro-Trump influence in Canada. I don't take money from anybody to influence anybody, and I just call it like I see it. I'm not being paid to influence you to like Trump or anything like that. I personally like Trump. There are things I don't like, and I tell you, but I think on the whole, he's better than Kamala Harris by a lot. And so, I mean, given the choice between, the world was given a choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was way better than Kamala Harris would have been, I think, personally. Anyway, so maybe Trump is influencing Canada, but that's part and parcel of the geopolitical game that all countries play at this point in time too. So is that anything new? I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It sure happens, but is it new? I don't think so. Can we stop it? Not while maintaining the relationship that the United States and Canada has, right? There's going to be political influence all the time, and we are massively influenced by the United States, as the whole world is. Here's Doug Ford talking about how he's going to target the ads to Republican sectors and really influence those Americans. Here we go.
I'll launch a $75 million ad, and we're going to repeat that message to every Republican district there is right across the entire country. I'll launch a...
So imagine the roles are reversed. Is that okay? Right? Mario says, struggling to find a counter argument against this. Scavino's right. If Trump did the same, ran ads in Canada in liberal districts, people would be livid. So apples to apples, talking about spending money, running these ads in, $75 million ad spends, not a small ad spend, right? So if Trump did that, people would lose their minds. People would say, this is foreign interference. You can't do this. People would poo-poo Trump and say, he's terrible. And people are trying to apply. I'm sure that Doug Ford did this with Mark Carney's blessing, right? And approval, and probably some federal money. Kirk says Ronald Reagan was against tariffs in general as a blanket economic tool, but thought it was an important tool for the president to be able to use. Reagan himself put 100% tariffs on Japan, Europe, and Europe, and threatened Spain with a 200% tariff. He used it to restore trade balance. That minutia, those details are missing from the ad, from Reagan's speech, because Reagan's speech was meant to be consumed in context in 1987 for his audience in 1987, not in 2025 to attack President Trump, right? And so like that's poor of Doug Ford. Not so good. Here is an exchange on Fox News talking about President Trump and how he's justifiably upset with Canada.
Canada. Here is the Truth Social posted last night. Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security. I've seen the video going back to the 80s from the Presidential Library. What's with this latest spat, and how far does it go?
Well, I don't think that anything that the President truthed yesterday is about just one thing. The fact is that the negotiations with the Canadians have not been very collegial. They've not been going well. I think the President's very frustrated. He wants a great deal with Canada, just like he wants a great deal with Mexico. But a sign of how difficult the Canadians have been is that we're now kind of negotiating with the Mexicans all by themselves rather than looking at all three.
I'm sorry to jump in here. I'm just trying to get nothing. I got one more thing to get to here, and they're trying to wrap me. Was that a point of negotiation that we saw last night? Is that what that is?
I think the President's very frustrated with Canada, and he has a right to be, and I think that's what that is.
Okay.
Frustrated with Canada and has a right to be. I think that's what that is. Here is Doug Ford yesterday after this whole thing blew up. I'd go to the Cottage too. Game 1 of the Blue Jays game. What are you talking of? The World Series Blue Jays? Wow, whatever. Apparently there was a pinch hit a home run that was crazy that took them up to like 9-2 or something like that. I didn't watch the game. I'm sorry. I have always liked politics. I remember 93, 92, 93. Everybody was like, yeah, baseball. I was like, oh, I should like baseball now? Okay. I guess so. I don't remember watching any games then either. I'm sure everybody was watching the games. I'm sure the games were everywhere, but I'm not. Good job, Blue Jays. Yay, sports stuff. I'm not big on sports. I've never liked sports. Anyway, Doug Ford, you'd think he'd take that opportunity to glad hand and be at the game and, all that other stuff. It's very high profile. He did a thing with Gavin Newsom that was really cringe, and they promised to send each other maple syrup and wine. And I was like, okay, whatever. I don't care about any of this. This is nonsense. But Doug Ford disappeared yesterday after the whole thing blew up trade negotiations between Canada and the United States, which, when you're becoming premier of a province, there's a couple of things on the list of, things you do not want to do, right? Blow up trade negotiations between the United States and Canada. That's like 1 or 2 on the list. That's up there on the list, right? So doing that, well, you got to go to the Cottage the day after, right? And I'm sure, again, because of Doug Ford's inavailability, I'm sure somebody signed off on all of this, being Carney and on behalf of the people above him. Tina says, Premier Ford's office tells me he's, quote, not around today to respond to the firestorm ignited by his Reagan ad. We are standing by outside his office and we'll bring you any updates. You're on Ford Watch today. Oh, great. So you get to go and sit outside of Doug Ford's office waiting for him to come to do a presser. Trump says trade talks with Canada are over as a result of the $75 million anti-tariff campaign. And so there are developments, but it's not really changed anything yet. Pierre Poilievre says all of today's trade and tariff chaos could have been avoided if Mark Carney kept his promise to negotiate a win and get a deal by July 21st. Wasn't it July 1st? Wasn't it by Canada Day we were supposed to have a deal? But this weak diplomacy and broken promises have left premiers no choice but to take things into their own hands. We must fight for our workers and businesses from a position of strength for a change. I don't think Poilievre is going to do a good job negotiating with Trump. I don't, because his whole thing is negotiate from a position of strength, but basically do all the same things that the Liberals are doing, but from a position of strength. And I don't think that's the right move. I think that Canada needs to mea culpa. Canada needs to figure out where our loyalties lie and then damn well act like it. Because right now, well, this isn't a good look. Anita Anand, reporting the Toronto Star, Anita Anand says Canada is in a strategic partnership with China. Oh, really? Says President Trump. How about you use that strategic partnership to replace all the trade with the United States? Have fun with that, says President Trump. USMC China, right? Like get gone. We're not interested, or like remove the US part. Darn. Anyway, Melissa Lantsman is responding to this. She says, in Mark Carney's and Anita Anand's version of Canada, Washington becomes the threat and Beijing becomes the friend. It's a pattern. They sneer at allies, flatter adversaries, and call it foreign policy. Weird, right? Brian Lilly says, how is this reality? How is this a headline? Not blaming the media and certainly not blaming his own employer. Minister Anand would say this is crazy. That Minister Anand would say this is crazy. So strategic partnership with China, eh? That's not going to pay the bills, man. That's just not going to do it. Freedom Fighter says Canada has no trust. Canada can no longer trust the United States, but Canada can trust China. Right, everybody? It's like having somebody lead a crowd into traffic, right? Like, hold on. I'm not going there. This was fun until you became an idiot and, got people hurt. Holy F, Canada, you have become beyond laughable. Well, I'm concerned that the people in charge are not working for us, and I wonder who they're working for, right? Andrew is responding to Norman Spector. Norman's had me blocked for a long, long time, which I'm not surprised about, but his take on China is this. He says, whatever is said, China cannot replace the United States on trade, nor can we ignore the fact that it is a brutal dictatorship that enslaves the Tibetans and Uyghur peoples, suppresses Hong Kong, threatens Taiwan, and resorts to forced labor and child labor. We cannot and must not stop trading with them, of course, but like the United Kingdom and the United States, the government must at least adopt our bill that requires China to demonstrate that Canadian imports do not include products of child labor, forced labor, or modern slavery. There is no possible moral justification for Quebec and Canada not to add their voice to and law to counter these serious violations by China without giving up legitimate trade with China, but with a clear-eyed view of its potential. Doug Ford has put Quebec and Canada in a difficult position, but the answer is not to replace the United States with something even worse. Even worse than the United States. The United States is a shining beacon on a hill of freedom, or that's what they present to the world, whereas China is slave labor. And please sign this declaration that you're not giving us products of slave labor, please. And don't sanction all the canola. Oh, they've already sanctioned the canola? Oh, sign this anyway. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense. It's insane. Oh, yeah, no, strategic partnership with China. They're definitely going to take our canola next year. Here's Mark Carney, no us in sight, and he's talking about this whole presidential Trump announcement. And it reminds me of hearing a whatever girl justify her bad behavior. And like, I can't control what my boyfriend does just because he found out that I'm sleeping with this Chinese guy. Now he's mad. I can't control him being mad. Now that he found out that I'm misrepresenting his words to justify to my lawyer the divorce proceedings, I don't know why he's mad. Our behavior is contributing to the response from the United States. If we changed our behavior, or to continue the analogy, if the OnlyFans girl gave it all up and was with one guy, that guy might trust her, right? Like, that guy may not have the same issues that all the other boys had when she was misbehaving and stuff, right? You know what I'm saying? And I'm just saying that it's our own behavior. This is a bad analogy. It's our own behavior that's leading to this. And Mark Carney's trying to say, oh yeah, we can't control the United States, but it's the United States is responding to us. The United States is responding to what we're doing, and what we're doing is stupid. So here's Mark Carney being stupid.
Look, for months we have stressed the importance of distinguishing things we can control and things we can't control. We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And it's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries. Now, what we can control, absolutely, is how we build here at home. And that's the focus of Budget 2025.
That's a pivot. What we can focus on, blah, blah, blah. Again, I feel like it's our own bad behavior that is contributing to the United States like making announcements like Anita and Ann just made that we're strategic partners with China. That kind of stupidity while we're unable to get a trade negotiation done with Trump, that's poor. That's bad. It's the same thing as announcing the Palestinian statehood recognition before getting the deal with Trump. It didn't make any kind of sense, and all it did is put a fly in the ointment of the trade negotiations, which were chilly anyway, right? It's like Chrystia Freeland was down there negotiating them or something like that. Ryan Garrettson says, name another country other than Canada that has been repeatedly sabotaging trade talks with the United States for 6 months. There are none. At what point do we consider it on purpose? And I said it is absolutely on purpose. What's happening is absolutely purposeful. And I was wrong about Mark Carney as well. There were us in that last statement here. He's less, militant, disciplined. Disciplined is the word I was looking for. Less disciplined when he's talking to the press on a tarmac than when he's giving a bigger speech. So that's interesting to note. The us returned a little bit. So Ryan Garrettson talking about our own government. Are they sandbagging us? Are they actually trying to scuttle the trade negotiations with the United States? Why would they do that? That would damage the country in a way that is historic, I think. And yet, it does seem like that's what they're doing. Here's Doug Ford, and he's responding at 2:27 p.m. He says, our intention was always to initiate a conversation about the kind of economy that Americans want to build and the impact of tariffs on workers and businesses. We've achieved our goal, having reached the United States audiences at the highest levels. I've directed my team to keep putting our message in front of Americans over the weekend so that we can air our commercials during the first 2 World Series games. I would imagine that they've paid for these ads already, and getting a refund and or stopping these ads would be expensive. So Doug Ford is going to run them over the weekend. But he continues, in speaking with Prime Minister Carney, Ontario will pause its U.S. advertising campaign effective Monday so that trade talks can resume. So we'll have trade talks resume on Monday when the ads paused. The people elected our government to protect Ontario, our workers, businesses, families, and communities. That's exactly what I'm doing. Well, it looks like you blew up trade negotiations between Canada and the United States, Doug. It doesn't look like you're protecting anything at all, least of all businesses, families, and communities. He continues, like I said earlier today, Canada and the U.S. are neighbors, friends, and allies. We're so much stronger when we work together. Let's work together to build Fortress AMCAN. I don't know what Fortress AMCAN is. I understand that he's making, like, let's do this together. But, I mean, isn't that the 51st state? And make our 2 countries stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. I don't know how we could be more secure when we're importing people from foreign countries who we don't know, and we just let them out on the streets. Crazy. Benny says, breaking Canada to pull the anti-tariff ads less than 24 hours after being called out by President Trump. Yep. So the CBC is reporting Ontario to pull ad that angered Trump on Monday, Ford says, after weekend's World Series games. And again, I think that that's because there's financial commitments and whatever. It's a weekend thing. And I don't know, trade negotiations being suspended is a big deal, right? It's a big slide. It's a big message, a big signal for Trump to send. So that's interesting. And it's not like the trade negotiations were going anywhere anyway. Maybe this will get them to move. Ron says, Prime Minister Carney says in 10 years things will be great, but for now, lots of sacrifices. He thinks Canadians are dumb because we've had the Liberal government for the last 10 years, and 10 full years we've been promised big improvements, and everything got worse. I get it, the tariff fight with President Trump does change everything, but telling people a fix will take years is a horrible approach. It's meant to free the Prime Minister's government from blame as the Canadian economy worsens and more Canadians lose jobs, which is deceitful. By insisting success is decades away, the Prime Minister shrugs his shoulders at growing economic disaster and says, told you this was going to happen, just be patient. One of the most cynical political moves I've witnessed in my 68 years. Likely, he will get away with it because it's Canada. It takes years of endless failures before we really get mad enough to throw out a liberal government. It took 9 years of Justin Trudeau. This horrible story that Canadians must expect to sacrifice and expect hard times is heartbreaking. The Prime Minister has given up after 7 months. Well, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't done anything at all. It's not like he's had any big wins in the last 7 months. He hasn't done anything. He's created bureaucracies out of other bureaucracies, but he hasn't done anything. So Ron continues, the idea that we must reposition ourselves or reposition over half of our exports is just terrifying because it's incredibly hard, because it may never work, because it gives up on making a deal with the United States. Why would we give up on making a deal with the United States? Wasn't the whole point of electing Mark Carney about him getting a deal done? This is indeed a difficult time in Canada. This is a time of recession. This isn't going to be easy, but the idea of waiting 10 years is both dishonest and horrific. Yeah, and in 10 years, people will just be used to the lowered standard of living. This is something I wanted to bring up. Mark Carney is talking about the tariffs and the different structure of the way that the government was funded historically in the United States from the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, free trade, high taxes, and Carney's saying, that structure's changed and we don't have control over that. And I think that it's interesting because I don't know that it's about foreign countries. I don't know that it's about anything other than domestic issues for Donald Trump and doing what he's doing. And the government shutdown is part and parcel of the show to demonstrate that tariffs can be used to fund needed social programs and government, like the military, instead of the bloated government apparatus that is currently shut down right now. And so this lady lays it out, and I just think it belongs here, although it kind of, not that it doesn't fit here, but the tariffs are massively a part of trade. It's just a different part of the same story. And I think that the reason we're seeing this is, yes, it's a big shift, but it's a shift where the relationship is restored between the government and the people. The government shouldn't be using the people to fund itself. The government should be funding itself and protecting the people. And so here is a structure where maybe that works. Here's this lady to explain.
Wait a minute. Is Trump actually showing us that tariffs could fund the government during a shutdown? Because if that's what's happening, this man is playing 4D chess while the rest of DC is still trying to find the board. While Democrats were busy blaming Republicans, Trump was making sure moms and kids didn't go hungry. And he didn't raise taxes, didn't need Congress, did not print more money. He used tariffs. Isn't that the same thing the media swore would tank the economy? Meanwhile, it's literally keeping food on the table for millions of families. So maybe the shutdown is proving something bigger, that America can fund itself when we stop letting bureaucrats waste our money and start putting America first. Now that's what I call leadership with results, not headlines. Check my broadcast channel for the article link and let me know. Brilliant move or total boss move.
Wow, there's always the chance that it's an error as well, but it looks like it's working as expected, and people have already lost the argument because the demonstration is running tickety-boo. Right. With that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. I've had some reports of people being able to, who were previously unable to get a Spotify thing to work. They got it to work yesterday. Somebody messaged me and they said, hey, I've been trying the last couple of days and today it worked. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I have not heard back from the Spotify people. I have heard back, but they keep emailing me back asking the customers to clear their cache and stuff. And I'm telling them, I'm like, I don't think that's the issue. You're not getting... Anyway, I don't know that we're communicating correctly, but there seems to be movement there.